The number one question I get is, Emile, why would I spend $60,000 on a franchise with you when I can start on my own and pay $0? And it's a valid question, but let's talk about the full story. 8 out of 10 business owners fail, meaning in a room of 10 people wanting to start a business, 8 are going to fail, 2 are going to succeed. What if I told you that $60,000 price tag is the fee that you are paying from all the mistakes, all the wins, and all the learning lessons from those 8 out of 10 people? Would that change your mind? In today's video, we're going to be talking about starting a franchise versus starting your own business. Let's get cracking into it. Hey guys, my name's Emile, the founder and franchise owner of Little Boomers Basketball. I actually started the business in May 1st, 2018 from the scratch, and we franchised 2 years later. So I know what it's like to be on both sides of the spectrum, starting a business and also starting a franchise. I'm going to go through the main points that you need to know if you're considering buying a franchise or starting a business. Let's get into point number one. Point number one, a proven product. When you start your own business, you are making a bet that the marketplace is going to want your product or service. When you start a franchise, there has already been a market fit somewhere else. Now, I'll give you some statistics. Research shows around 20% of businesses fail in their first year, and roughly 45% don't make it past the last or the next 5 years. And that's because there was never a market fit. There was never enough demand for that product or service. When you come into a franchise, there's already been an established product prior. Now, don't get confused. That doesn't mean you're guaranteed success. It just means the product or service has already been proven somewhere else. But it doesn't guarantee success. A lot of people get a little bit confused about that. The reality is it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to show that a product or service has been proven in a marketplace. When you're coming into a franchise, you're paying for that time in advance. Let me give you an example using a pizza restaurant. I'm in Sydney. Let's say I want to open up a new pizza restaurant, and I open up a new pizza restaurant. And let's say I'm trying to fine-tune the recipe for meat lovers, my favorite pizza. I try cabanossi. They don't like it. Okay, let me go back to the drawing board. I put this pizza base. I put this tomato sauce. I tried mozzarella. I tried cabanossi. I tried this type of meat. And finally, after 2 years, I figured out the perfect recipe to cook up a delicious meat lovers pizza. That's 2 years of testing, 2 years of time, 2 years of trialing and error, right? And then after that, I build up my next product and it takes me another year. And then say after 3 or 4 years, I finally got the menu down pat. That's if you were to do it on your own. If you're coming into a franchise, they've already tested the different products and what the audience want on their menu. Now, let's say I take my idea from Sydney and I say, you know what, I want to expand it to Melbourne. I'm making a ton load of money in Sydney. Let's go to Melbourne. I go to Melbourne and guess what? They don't like my meat lovers pizza. They don't like the other items on my menu. They don't like it at all. So I have to close down that shop. So remember, all a franchise is a product or service that's already been proven in the marketplace somewhere else, but it doesn't guarantee that another area or another state or another site will be successful. Point number two, infrastructure. Most franchise networks have spent a lot of money and a lot of time building different infrastructures that franchisees can come in and access from day one. From accounting to back-end systems to marketing, all of those costs a lot of money if you're going to start a business by yourself. For example, if you're a business owner and you want to start your own business, you need to find leads, you need to do marketing, you need to do sales, and you need to build up all of those infrastructures from scratch. You may have to pay a marketing agency. They may cost you $2,000 to $5,000 per month. But with a franchise, a lot of those systems and infrastructure are already in place. For example, a lot of franchises have what's called a marketing fund or a marketing levy. A marketing fund is pretty much each franchisee contributes a portion of their money, say $100 or $500. And if you have 10 franchisees, that's $5,000. The franchisor get that money and invest it on behalf of the franchisees into a new marketing campaign. It might be a Facebook ads, it might be a Google ads campaign, but they're harnessing pretty much the network by everybody contributing a little bit to pull up a lot of money to invest into a marketing campaign. Now, if you're a business owner, you might not have $5,000, or you might have to invest that $5,000 from scratch. That's an example of what the infrastructures that are in place in a franchise network. The other day I was speaking to a lady and she was telling me that she's run some hypothetical profit and loss numbers and she wanted to run them by me. So I said, okay, what do you have? I've calculated, Emile, the court hire fees to be about $200 an hour. And then I said, whoa, hold on. Your numbers are really off. And so I said, where did you get those numbers from? Oh, look, I assumed. Never assume. I've created a franchise profit calculator where you can input real numbers, court hire fees, coaches' wages, how many kids you have in the program, so you can find out what your potential profit is per class. Click the link below to use the calculator. I hope you find it useful. Another example, and I'll give you a real one with Little Boomers Basketball, we've built a complete back-end customizable system for franchisees to manage their enrollments and for parents to book in. Money goes into their account, they get the enrollment on their attendance list. All of that stuff has cost us, God knows, thousands and thousands of dollars. When we bring a new franchisee on board, all they simply get is logging access to their new back-end system. They don't have to build the whole thing from scratch. If you're a business owner and you're coming into a business or you're starting on your own, you got to build up all of those systems and all of those infrastructures yourself, which can amount to a lot of money. Now we're going to move to the third point. Point number 3 is brand. Now picture this. You're a parent, you're driving, school's just finished, you've got the kids in the back seat, they're on their iPads, and you drive by Joe's Burgers. It's a local burger restaurant. The kids don't say anything, they're just on their iPads glues. Then 500 meters down the road, you drive by McDonald's, the big yellow arches. They see the yellow arches and now they're screaming at you, I want to go Macca's, I want to get a Happy Meal, I want to get a Happy Meal. Why did the kids just go ballistic when they saw the yellow arches, but when they drive by Joe's Burgers, they didn't say anything? Brand. That is the power of brand. And these days, customers in 2026 want to purchase from credible businesses that they trust. And the only way to do that is to build a brand. Because when you start on your own, you have no brand. You have no trust in the marketplace. You have no credibility. When you come into a franchise that hopefully has a good brand, you are piggybacking on that brand that the franchise company has spent years developing. And the same principle applies with us. When we launch Little Boomers Basketball in a territory, parents already know the brand. They feel trusted. They say, oh, Little Boomers is here. I'm going to enroll with them rather than like a provider I don't know. So brand is so important in 2026. And that brand recognition really allows you to shorten the sales cycle that you have with a customer. For example, if a customer needs 3 months to make a decision, if you have a brand, they may need 1 month or even less than a month. And I'll give you a great example. In Australia, we've got Jim's Mowing, very well-known, reputable brand. If I want to start my mowing company tomorrow, Emile's Mowing, and let's say I'm a really good mower and I'm better than Jim's Mowing, guess what? A customer might go with Jim's Mowing rather than my mowing company, even though I'm better, not because of the quality of my service, but because of a trusted and reliable brand like Jim's that's been around for 30 or 40 years. So that's the power of a brand that you're leveraging when you come into a franchise. Point number 4 is support. When you come into a franchise, you are banking that you're going to get support not only from head office, but also from a team of franchisees like yourself. When you're starting your own business, unless you have a business coach or a mentor, it can be a very daunting and a very challenging road by yourself. And I'll give you an example where I really learnt about this. Last year, we held our Boomers Leadership Conference in October. We had all 24 of our franchisees in the same room, and the energy in that room was electrifying. Having like-minded business owners talking about their dreams, about their struggles, about their passions, about their ambitions. The room was so electrifying. I can't wait for our Boomers Leadership Conference in the Gold Coast this year. But just having those people in the room, collaborating with other franchisees was something very powerful that you can only have when you're part of a franchise network. And in a franchise network, you'll also have different types of support that you can leverage as a franchisee. It might be a dedicated support network for marketing, a dedicated support network for operations. So there's really established brands have got a range of support that they can offer you as a franchisee. Now, the last point I want to say is there is a trade-off to coming into a franchise versus starting your own business. And that trade-off, ladies and gentlemen, is control versus flexibility. And that is very important. If you want to maintain flexibility, do it your own way. You don't come into a franchise. A franchise does limit what you can and can't do. You lose control that you normally would have as a business owner. And that's the big trade-off. And the problem that I see in franchising is when people come into franchising wanting the same flexibility as a business owner. I'll give you 2 examples to name a few. If you want to come into our franchise, you've got to purchase from our suppliers. Basketballs, cones, marketing materials, everything. You might have your friend Joe Blow who can offer a cheaper price for basketballs, but unfortunately you have to go with our price, and it's a breach of the franchise agreement if you go with another supplier. That's an example of losing control. The second example is most franchise agreements have a list of approved products and services that you can run in a franchise. Now, you might have a grand idea of a new product or service that you want to implement, but unfortunately, with the franchise agreement, you're not allowed to implement that unless you get approval from the franchisor. We're in the primary school space. A franchisee might come to us and say, I've got this really good idea for running coaching for high school kids. And if we say, no, that's not a direction we want to go in, then unfortunately the franchisee has to abide by that. But that is an example of the control that you lose when you come into a franchise. And that brings us to the end of the episode. If you made it this way, thank you for stopping by. I've got another video that I want you guys to watch, and it tells you the secrets that nobody tells you before you buy a franchise. Click down here to watch it. I'll see you in the next video.